All right, so today I have on with me James, and he and I are going to be talking a lot about grief from both of our experiences. How are you doing today, James?
Hi, I'm doing all right. It's a little late in the evening for me at this point, but so I'm a little tired, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I know it's late, but I know we're gonna have a good conversation. So, tell us then a little bit about you and like your background and kind of
All
how
right.
did you then get like interested in the grief topic?
So my background is I am just a um, Long Island, New York boy who grew up there, spent about 23 years there, and then decided to move out. Uh, I would say a lot of my reasoning behind moving out of New York is, kind of connected to my grief. Um, boy, what I mean, I'm every bit of a nerd as most people are nowadays. I like video games. I like comics. I have my cat. His name is Soup. I think people would be
I love
upset if I
that.
didn't name drop my cat at some point. He's a little goofball. I love him. Um, but yeah, my grief is connected with my siblings. In 2015, I was 19 years old. I lost my older sister to an overdose from heroin, and later on, more recently, in the last 2 years now, I lost my younger sister to an overdose as well. So my my interest in grief was not anywhere connected with me as a person before I experienced it. Um, I was in undergrad at the time, going into my sophomore year of community college when my older sister died, 2 days before classes began. And I've grown up with traumatic experiences. My dad was an alcoholic, my dad's an addict. So that's kind of where everything kind of starts with my sisters and their addictions. And I thought, this is just another challenge. I'm going to be able to, go about my daily life, or at least try as hard as I can. And I was absolutely wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. Grief took me in a path, and it took me in its hold differently than anything I've ever experienced before. I failed four of my five classes that semester. I got kicked out of executive boards because I couldn't keep my GPA up. I almost got kicked out of school because I couldn't keep my GPA up. Uh, and social life, panic attacks that I've never had before, all these different types of emotions I've never experienced. And it led me to wanting to do something called an autoethnography, which I learned from my mentor at the time when I eventually ended up in a small state school called in Oneonta, New York, where my mentor, Dr. Summer Cunningham, she introduced me to the method of writing called autoethnography, and I was able to, for the first time, and this is, mind you, 3 years after my little sister's death, that I was able to articulate and find instances of grief where people spoke about the things that I was going through in not necessarily like a very popular medium, but in academic journals and in writing and all these different types of accounts where, people don't talk about grief. And when I was experiencing grief for the first time, or rather, my first experiences with grief, um, no one kind of prepares you. Our Western culture over here in North America, we don't talk about grief. And it's so taboo. It's so, I don't know. It's just something that people don't want to. It's very hush hush. It's kept to the family. We're not supposed to bring it up in circles, and it really hurt me. It made the process of finding and coping with my older sister's death so much harder than it needed to be. So my background kind of that's really it took a while of a couple of years for me to get there, but my background into getting interested in grief is actually writing about my own grief, and finding that there are people in different mediums that also were writing about their grief, but not just as like a journal or a blog or something like that, but like academically, and finding all these different types of studies and sources to go along and kind of back up, academically why I was feeling the way that I was feeling or experiencing grief the way I was.
You said so many things, a few of which that I definitely resonate with, but definitely first, very sorry to hear about your sisters. And I think, like a lot of people, once we experience grief, it definitely leads us to, our mission, or like you said, like reading about it, writing about it. So I think that's so interesting. And but like you said, it is so hush hush, like where we are. And I think also people have painted a picture that it's got to look sad and it's got to look and sound depressing, and like my friends don't want to hear me talk about it, so I'm not going to say
Mm-hmm.
anything. But it's like that's the thing, and that's what like I hope our conversation today does too. It's like it doesn't have to look a certain way or sound a certain way, but like it's part of our life,
Right.
whether we like
Yeah.
it or not.
Mm-hmm. It's just here in every facet,
Mhm.
and grief can be so beautiful. And I say that in a very bittersweet manner. A lot of people have to be like, "What do you mean beautiful?" I'm like, "I'm allowed to be happy." And that doesn't mean I'm happy that I have to experience this, but I can find beauty in the loss of in the death of people that I love, I care about.
Mhm.
um, because there are so many different types of ways to look at something like this. Especially when you get into, I'm not too spiritual, I'm not too religious. I used to be, in my younger when I was a kid, but I feel like that's kind of everybody at this point. But I there are how do you not go through sudden death and try to find some answers in the way of, I talk to my sisters all the time. I don't know where they are. I wouldn't be able to tell you the first clue. And theology is crazy, and there's so many different wormholes you can get down. But regardless, there is a lot of beauty in grief, and I hope that one of the things that I wanted to use my writing for was to create a different narrative for grief and how we communicate it, because I am a communication background at heart. I have a BS and I have a master's in communication, and I think that we just need to talk about it more and open up that narrative and create and change the script that society has written for us, and start writing our own scripts and start writing our own narratives about however we want to talk about grief. Even if you don't want to talk about your grief, that should be your right, but it shouldn't be something that's placed upon you before you even get there.
Yeah, I love that idea of changing the narrative. And also, I'm a communications major, so that's cool. Um, so my
Love that.
yeah, my question, one of them that I have is when you were saying that like you were failing your classes, what were you kind of what was kind of going through your head about like the whole like school process? Like were you kind of like I got to keep going, I got to keep pushing, got to keep learning, or yeah, like what was kind of going through your head at that time?
The first thing that comes to my head when I think of something like that is I felt like I was disappointing my professors. And I'm not like a goody two shoes student. I even when I try my hardest, I still can't really keep above, a 3.0. Gladly or happily in my grad school, I ended with a 3.4, I think, which was me trying really hard to keep up with the standards. But in both my community college and then my undergrad, I didn't get I barely graduated with a 2.5. So it's and those failing those classes definitely didn't help. I felt lost. I felt, like I said, felt like I was disappointing my professors, to which I took a few of them again. It's actually you'll see a repetitive notion of I've failed multiple classes in multiple institutions because I didn't know how to communicate my grief. It happened in my undergrad as well, which led me to communicating to my professor at the time, who turned into my mentor. Ended up taking like all of her classes, like 6 or 7 of her classes, just because one class I failed for her. I didn't fail. I got a D in her class. I told myself I'm better than this. I've been through this before. I will not let my grief suck me into a vacuum and hold me. Um, and I don't know, at least at 19 years old, where I thought I knew how to fight my own battles, I slowly found myself in a void. I know a lot of people describe grief as emptiness. I definitely felt that type of emptiness. I had no motivation to do anything after work or after school. I didn't work. Um, I kind of just wanted to distract myself. Um, I think the distractions were, I had a girlfriend at the time. I had a whole group of new friends that I had met the semester before. And I was just trying to, I didn't drink until I turned 21 because my dad was an alcoholic and everyone always said, you're just like your dad. And I was like, oh, great. My dad doesn't do things that I like. So I didn't really, find any bad habits, I guess, per se, like bad habits. Um, but I don't know. I'm just gonna keep rambling on because it's just so many different types of things that I was feeling. Just to really keep it simple, it's just that emptiness, and I
Mhm.
didn't know where to find substance.
Yeah, because I definitely feel like I was being pushed by myself, I guess, almost like I should be okay. I should be going back to work. I was in my master's degree at the time. I should be like getting all this done, but I just like literally couldn't get anything done. I couldn't like you're
Uh,
saying, like, just felt like empty, couldn't do anything like after work or and and yeah, and I think like that's the one thing that's like everybody's grief is different too, and like how we do it or like when it comes about, and like because I was having a conversation with somebody else and they were just saying like I didn't have a choice, I had to keep going, but like for
mhm.
me, I could not like keep going and doing work, like I had to take more time off. So I
Yeah.
think it's unique to everybody.
Mhm. I was working when my older sister died. I was working off book for the Pepsi company. I was like almost contracted, like kind of weirdly. It was just off the books job. I was going into different stores and just stocking their product. And the day that my sister died, my mom called me, and I was at a Target going walking into the back, and she gives me a call and she says to me, she's like, James, honey, I need you to come home. And immediately right there from her voice, and a month prior, she had called me in the same voice, same manner, because my younger sister had tried to kill herself by overdosing uh, on some sort of medication that she had. I think it was for depression or something. I forget. It's God, this is so long ago at this point. So like immediately I heard the tone in her voice and I said, "Why, mom?" She's like, "I can't tell you over the phone. Just come home." And I said, um, I need to know why. And she wouldn't budge. She just kept saying. And immediately as I hung up the phone, like I knew. I knew my sister was dead. When
Mhm.
you live the life of an addict, or someone that you love is an addict, every day is the day that they're gonna die. Um, Even when they get clean, a one bad day, a slip up, something, they try a dose that they used to know that they could do, and it's just not enough for that body anymore, and they're done, they're gone. Um, so I held a lot of responsibility in trying to be strong for my family. Um, my dad hasn't been much in my life, mostly because I chose not for him to be there. Um, I pretty much kicked him out of my life. My sister still kind of hung out with him. Um, but after he was pretty much out of the house, I just had no reason to, I just didn't feel like he deserved anything from me. So, and my brother, I have an older brother as well. Uh, and he at the time had just moved back into us because he had broken up with his girlfriend, who he was living with. But for all that time, through all of my high school years into, 18, 19 years old, I was the man of the house. And so once my older sister died, I really tried to be as, as just not even there for my family, just tried to like show this facade of strength. Um, and it really, I did not, I didn't do a good job. I broke down very easily. Um, I did a lot of crying to myself at night. I was in a large insomniac for a while. I couldn't find anything that could put me to sleep. I was getting like 2, 3 hours of sleep a night. Um, and eventually I knew I had to start working again. So I ended up started working, and I was full-time student. And that finally kind of like gave my body a little bit of exhaustion that I thought I was feeling, because you're going through grief and you're just mentally tired all day, but my body wasn't physically tired. So,
Yeah, I hear you with like having to be like you're saying you felt like you had to be strong because like I think I don't know, like I feel like I definitely saw that for my dad. Like I feel like he felt like, he had to be strong and I feel like my sibling too. And yeah, I mean, I think like I always saw my mom as like somebody that was very strong. So I think that always kind of rubbed off on me. So then I was like, I have to be like, strong in this and like my own problems, but like, oh, crying like, is weak. But I definitely think like looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have been like, you should cry. Like obviously I got to that point and like, but like when it first happened and stuff, like I wish I leaned into the feelings more. So, is there anything that like you feel really helped you like when you were starting to grieve? I know you're saying like writing about it, but anything else?
um, I would say just falling back on the things that I love, just making sure. I've developed this. I when someone that I care about loses somebody now, or they're going through a hard time, I tell them three things. I say, stay distracted, stay hydrated, and stay vocal. Staying distracted in a healthy manner, not letting yourself be, nothing, everything in an extreme is has the possibility of being bad for you. But keep yourself distracted. If you think you need a distraction, go and don't be guilting yourself about it. You're allowed to be selfless. Um, if I want to go nowadays, if I want to go hide myself in my room and play video games for 5, 6 hours because I just miss my sisters and I need a distraction, I'm going to do that, because it's going to get to a point in time where, I'm exhausting myself and I'm overextending myself, and people are like, oh, let's talk about it, let's hang out. I'm like, no, I think I just need this me time. I need this time to just kind of pass. um, Stay hydrated, because water is always important to, just keep yourself healthy, keep fluids running through your body, make sure that, any tears that do fall from your face get put back. And then stay vocal. I express that people should talk about when they don't keep yourself shut in, don't hide yourself, because that's where the real damage kind of comes into play, is, not the immediate effects of that death right there and then, but the time and the periods of, months and years that could happen of you just thinking that you can't talk to anybody about it. That's where it killed me. And granted, yes, you said something before, every grief is different, but we're people, we like community, we like expressing our emotions to people. We like talking about those emotions to people. So if we can't do that, then a lot of times it just ends up hurting yourself.
Yeah, and you brought up that really important point of the community, and I think that's one of the things that like really inspired me to like start the group. It's because I felt, and it wasn't any of my friends' fault or anything, like love them, they all supported me, but I just felt like I didn't have anybody that could like relate to, because it's always nice to
Right.
have somebody that like completely gets it, like, oh, I know, like been there, got it. But I didn't, not a lot of people like lose their like, sibling at when you're 20 something, or their mom when you're 20 something, like, so I didn't know anybody that I was like even remotely like, close with, that lost somebody, that lost their mom, unless they were like older. So I felt like
Right.
I couldn't really connect to them, because I'm like, okay, yeah, like, I don't have a husband, I'm not married, I don't have kids. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So how did you feel like I hear you say community, did you feel like you could lean into your friendships fully, or did you try to find like other people that kind of understood?
It's a little hard because it's almost in two ways. I split everything. I mean, you might do this a little bit now. Um, you have the people that knew you before and the people that know you after, right? Like, so I have friends, and I went to high school with my sisters. We're only 2 years apart, both ways. 2 years older, 2 years younger. So I know a lot of her friends. I love both of their friends. Um, and so and we went to a high school of about like 14,000 people. Not sorry, 1,400. That's a lot different of a
I was like,
number.
holy crap. Okay.
A whole population of a city. Um, and so in my graduating class, I had 450 people, I think, in high school. So my sisters were pretty much equal to that. So everybody knew once that all happened. I mean, at my older sister's services for the week, there were lines out the door. Um, and it was one of those parts that I found beauty in grief. Not immediately at that moment, but now that I look back at it, I was like, how loved my older sister was to have. And granted, like it's sudden death, like a death, an overdose is something that you don't really calculate for. Um, Even kind of when I said before about like every day is the day that the addict can die. It's also like I saw my dad go through decades of addiction. He's still alive. And it's like, okay, so it's like, okay, if he's safe, then, how deadly is it until it becomes that reality? Um, so yeah, the community immediately, we got we got food sent to our house and flowers, people I haven't spoken to in years were texting me. Um, I saw every single one of my ex-girlfriends at the wakes. And I don't know how they did it, but they all came at the same day. So that was a crazy experience. My best friend, um, their name is Gabe or Gabriel, and they did not leave my side of the entire time that we were at the services. Them and my friend Kenny, who I was closest to, those two at the time. Kenny a little less so, just because we've lived our own lives. But Gabe has been my best friend for freaking ever now, and um, I I regret the way that I told them that my older sister died, because they pretty much grown up with her too. I It happened in the morning, and so I had woken them up and told them, and I brought to them the biggest shock they've ever experienced, aside from the day that they found out their cousin had died. Um, but the small bits of community, I guess, really I gravitated towards. It's nice to have everyone's support, and I, a guilty pleasure of mine is when I'm feeling really down. I don't necessarily like to just go out and be like, "Hey, I need to talk to somebody," but I'll post to Instagram. And I'll post like a little bit of a memorial or a tribute to one of my sisters when I'm feeling like I miss them a lot. And those are always my most liked, which I love. It's weird to be like, I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm fishing for likes, because I'm not like, it's not like an ego thing for me. It's more of a, I want to see how celebrated their lives are still after, I mean, it's almost been 7 years for my older sister now, and it's been about 2 years come this October for my younger sister. And there is just so much, again, beauty in the fact that people still remember them. They still want to talk about it. They still reach out to me to talk about them. And I always implore people to tell me stories, tell me things I don't know, give me pictures that I've never seen. If you have videos and I can hear their voice and I can hear their laughter or even their cries or their scream, like them yelling at each other, like I want to hear all these things, because I wasn't much a part of my sister's lives. They were like freaking like this. They were best friends, but I was always very far away. Not like distance wise, but just I kept to myself. Um, but no one plans for their sisters to die when they're a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
or like further down the line, a couple of years after the older sister dies. You don't expect your younger sister to die. Um, So I'm sure you have a lot of similarities with what I'm saying. It was your mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you're saying, like the whole like line out the door. I remember thinking the same thing, like, wow, like shoot, she was really loved. Like,
Hmm.
I knew she had like friends that she'd hang out with and stuff, but I was like, oh shit, like this random person she worked with in like 1988 from like the hospital that she hasn't worked at since like 1998. Like
Yeah.
she, like showed up and I'm like, oh, like, but then some people are there for like your other family member,
Hmm.
but like, so it wasn't weird. It was like you're saying, it was like a beautiful experience where, because you're like, wow, like shit, like they were loved, but then also like I'm loved too.
Uh,
Like it was just like this
hmm.
like very like loving experience, and like yes, like you're saying, like some people really like showed up and stuff, and like, and I think like you said, I did not know how to tell people like it happened. So like I ended up like texting some people because I had no idea, and like I didn't even tell like some of my like good friends from Albright, like college,
Right.
like I was like, I don't really know what to say, like, because it was also hard for me to even say it too. But
Hmm.
two of my friends that went to school with like showed up because they like looked up stuff online, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so amazing, like that they did that. So yeah, like you're saying, it brings up so many like different emotions, not just sad, but like some loving things too. So, do you think that, like, do you feel like your younger sister, do you think it was her grief that, like, really, kind of led her to, what happened, or
Yeah.
was she kind of having, like, you know,
Um,
if you don't mind me asking?
yeah. So my older sister's addiction started from a car accident she got into when she was in 11th grade.
Mm,
Um, she had skipped school one day, and it was New York, it was February, and there were giant snowbanks. They went to go make a turn, and someone T-boned them. And my sister got probably was one of the more hurt ones in the accident, and she really hit her head hard. So she started, this is just a theory really, is that uh she couldn't manage the pain, so she kept tried used, and then used the prescriptions that she was given, and then when those ran out, looked for other things, because New York is, in all accounts of the word, a cesspool for people who just want to get high. I mean, whole towns are known about where you can get what, or what whatever. Everyone knows somebody. um and so my younger sister was in high school, a senior when my younger sister was in high school. She was a senior when my older sister died, and she was, I don't want to, I don't compare, but uh, her grief overcame her. Um, so yes, I think definitely, that is, it didn't start right away
Hmm.
where she, her addiction started, but slowly after high school, she graduated. We celebrated. We were all so fucking proud of her. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
I didn't ask about language, so but it sometimes slips out. um and I don't know. She didn't want to go to college. She did ever. I don't think I ever saw her have a job while she was living on Long Island. And she was pretty much persuaded to leave Long Island like 2 or 3 years later. I was in undergrad, away at my undergrad, getting my bachelor's at the time that she had left, but she went down to South Carolina to go into a halfway home. Um, and from there, I think 2018, I had only seen her about maybe like 4 or 5 times in person, before she died, and she, 2022. But she just, I don't think she could ever really come to terms with it.
Hmm.
I think it really messed her up. There were a few diagnoses she had gotten before. I mean, there were times that my mom and I would get calls, and she would, my mom would kick her out every so often because she just treated my mom's home like almost like a motel. She would bring guests in, they were getting high, and people who didn't respect our house and were coming in at all times of the night. So my mom was fed up with it, so she said goodbye. But she'd come and go pretty much, be allowed in, be allowed out, or not be allowed in, not be allowed out, which she always found a way to force herself out. Um, and there would be times where we found her, we were called by hospitals. She, be like, oh, she's been dehydrated for 5 6 days and she doesn't know where she is, she doesn't remember days, and these are all times probably she's like super high as well. And I don't know how she's, you know and trying not to really think about all that stuff while I'm, away at school as well. So I kind of avoided a lot of times with that. I don't know if I necessarily say I would regret how I acted, but I've always told myself I have to protect myself and look out for myself first, because I don't know, maybe I'm trying to save my own face here. Not here, but just in
No, I
general,
mean,
in my own rationale
yeah.
of it. It's something I haven't really fully unpacked. So I guess it's harder to speak up upon that. But yeah, my younger sister definitely my younger sister died because my older sister died.
And I think that's something that is kind of in my thoughts. Like, I feel like it's either like, you start to grieve, or or somebody like puts it off and like it comes back in some way, shape, or form later in your life. And yeah, like in other words, you can't escape it. And like, just, we can't, like, you can, but like, I don't know, I think what word am I looking for? Like, it comes back eventually in some way, or
Mhm.
manifests in another way. So maybe like somebody starts drinking or whatever. I don't know. That's just one of my, I feel like, observations and thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Um, it goes back to um, that notion that grief is unique to everybody. I do not know how my mother experienced the grief of my sisters. I don't know how my older brother. I don't know how my dad. I don't know how their friends did. I just know how I experienced it, and I can listen, and I can, your shared experience is my shared experience, but it's not directly, the experience of the individual. Um, so it goes back to that idea that community is the way that links everything together, because we can only tell our experiences, but if we're only telling our experiences just to ourselves and our own crazy heads that we have now from these experiences that we're it's just I can't imagine where I would be if I didn't start communicating and being vocal with
Mhm.
people and communities, and or hearing other people's stories without them knowing mine too. Just someone being brave enough to tell their story about the death they've had in their life, which has inspired me to be more vocal about mine because I saw the impact it had on myself.
Mhm. And that like leads me to, the thought, are men kind of, do you think like men are allowed to grieve by society, or do you think, we give a safe enough space? Because I don't know, like when I think of grieving, I feel like I think of like a woman or like a female like grieving, but it's like uh, are are they? I don't, I'll leave it kind of at that. What do you think?
I The easy answer is no. Just no. I don't think so. The more complex answer is I think it really depends on which community you're looking at. Um, I what God, I was just watching. Have you ever seen Top Gun,
No.
the original? That's fine. I'm gonna spoil a part of it right now for you.
Okay, that's fine.
In the movie, and forever's listening, if you don't want to hear this, the spoiler of Top Gun, just fast forward, I guess, in this.
30 seconds.
It's been like 20 years. Um,
Oh man, where's my phone? Oh, sorry.
no worries.
All right. Damn.
So in Top Gun, towards the latter half of the movie, um, you have Tom Cruise's character, and I forget the actor's name, but he plays like every pilot has his wingman like in the pilot with in it's like their radar person, so that it's always in pairs. They have to eject, and the other guy ejects not of his own fault, but he ends up smacking his head against the canopy, which is the glass part of the that ejects first. Um, but because they were like in a spinning or whatever, like he smacked against it, he dies. The next scene, or like two scenes later, is just them being like, "You just got to go out there and do it." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, I get it. This is like 20 years ago, whatever. These is into the 90s. But I mean, and you're talking about soldiers as well. So it's like, you're gonna see death on a battlefield when you are a soldier. But it's just like that, that notion that this is a fictional thing, and it's like, uh, uh telling, uh,
Somebody's shooting off fireworks? Sorry.
that's all right.
The heck?
It's just telling people that are in the same field, or just guys in general, like you just got to get over it. And I think our society does that way too often, especially where you mentioned before something about like, oh, you just got to go back to work. um, and you're just like, well, is that it? Is that all the only option I have? Is just, okay, it's been 5 days, you don't get to grieve anymore. You may have lost one of the most important people in your life, but nope, you can't let that affect anything. And where I say it's a little bit more of a complex answer is because I've had different experiences than that. But that was my preconceived notion of society. And I think that we see it a lot too, but I didn't really experience that. Um, the first job I got after my older sister's death, I was working at Lush Cosmetics. Um, Loved that place. My manager at the time had no idea. I had come in after no, I came in for a shift after classes one day, and I was just having a really bad day. Um, and I'm in the back with dealing with our inventory, and I just start sobbing. And she's like, "What is going on?" And I pretty much just I was like, I have I was like, I'm tired of lying to people. I'm tired of not people not knowing what I'm going through, because it's exhausting. Because I'm a very open book to people, always have been with my life. Oh, very okay, very vulnerable. But this is something that I was like, nope, you have to keep it to yourself. So I told her, and she was like, James, go home. like immediately. She was just like, I can't imagine the types of things that you're going through, and you ever need ever to, go and deal, with what you need to deal with. You don't have to force yourself to be here and do it. And that was the first time that anyone had ever given me like, a second to breathe. When thinking I have to be this strong individual who just, carries the weight of the world of all and carry the weight of my world, which is just barreling down. Um, but I do think that in just general, I am probably a minority in the cases of that. Men, granted, a lot of media is shifting, but you see it on both sides. You can make cases for um, the resurgence of the manly man in the country today, but you can also see this divide where people are being very strong hearted and strong willed about, you do not get to define who I am or what I'm calling myself, or you know you don't get to call me a man. I get to call myself a man if I well damn please. And I am a lot softer of a man, and I always kind of have been. Um, but I identify as a man. I identify as a male. I'm, cis and everything in all regards. I am a straight white man, and I don't think I'm any less because I spend a couple hours a day, or every so often, crying about the death of my sister. Um, I think that anyone that dares come to my face and tell me that, well, I'll just walk away because I'm gonna laugh at you and I'd just be sorry for you. I'm not gonna do anything about it because it's worthless. I think that mentality is something that we need to move past from,
Hmm. Oh
because
my God.
everyone should be allowed to grieve.
Right, right. I completely agree with you. And like, just from what I've seen, I don't feel like I've ever heard any like man explain like their grief like before like I experienced myself. Like I don't think I've ever ran into anybody that was like, yeah, I'm grieving, or like I've had a loss, like, and like tell me about it. And yeah, so I think it's like super, I think it's amazing that you're leaning into it, and you leaned into it too,
Right.
and not like, and you're so open with it. Like I think that's awesome, and it's gonna help like a lot of men, um, you know, with it. So
Oh, I
like,
hope so.
yeah, no, no, for sure, because I think, yeah, even I mean, granted, it was my dad, and he did grow
Mhm.
up in like a different time, but I think I don't even think I saw him shed a tear for my
Mhm.
mom. Whereas I think I saw him shed it, like get a little bit upset when my grandfather died, but I
Mhm.
think he was just trying to be like super strong for me, which
Right.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I saw my uncle be like upset, my
Mhm.
cousin, but they've always both like felt things a little bit more than,
Mhm.
or showed more of their emotions. So
Yeah.
I really hope like society, or I see more men,
Right.
lean into it and talk about
Mhm.
it, express it, etc. What would you say though, like if you had advice for somebody that, identifies as a man and stuff, what advice maybe would you give for them regarding like leaning into their grief or like grieving?
Um, I would say, if you are questioning of like where to start, just anonymity is great for that type of stuff. I don't really use it too often because I never really grew up with it. But Reddit is, you can find places to chat and kind of just post about it. And even if you don't want an answer, even if you don't want an answer, you just need to get it out. Go send it to Reddit and then never look at it again. Um, send I used to go and have picnics at my older sister's gravestone, and I'd bring like one or two friends, just someone that I knew that was just super close to me. And I didn't even have to, I told them too, I was like, I might not say a word to you, or we might chat the entire time. But, and they're like, no, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, however you need to experience it, I'm here with you. Um, I I had while I was working on my master's, I was working for a time on my thesis of which I eventually dropped because the death of my younger sister happened right in between working on it, and it was just too much. So I opted for a different route that would still lead me to graduating without putting an emotional scar on my life. Um, but I was working on how do people in online communities of playing video games use video games and that online sphere to cope with their death, the death of people that they know in life. And God, the research of that is not enough that it needs to be. There are memorials in video games for people who have lived their life and people who know them exclusively as like their usernames and their their gamer tags and stuff like that. There are statues in World of Warcraft for players who were known across the communities. More recently, a Minecraft YouTuber by the name of Technoblade, he no one knew besides him and his family, but he had some. I think it might have been cancer. I might be wrong, so I don't want to say that definitively, but he had something. It killed him. I think he was 22 years old. The world found out that he was going to die after he died because his father had posted a video that they recorded together to tell the world, but he didn't want anybody, he didn't want that to affect anything. So he kept, these guys had millions of subscribers. Minecraft, the Mojang, the developer of the game, put his likeness into their home screen afterwards, and it stays there. Um, there are these you can find these things anywhere. Just open yourself to whatever your niche is, and just Google something. Be like, oh, how do I relate this to this?
No, we froze. Shoot.
Was
Um,
that yeah? So pretty much to sum it all up is in the world that we have now, you could find anything that matches anything. If you like, I'm sure you could find like, you know, gym playlists that focus on, stuff like grief. There is, I mean, podcast after podcast. There is television shows that center their themes around grief. There is, there's so many different things. You know, it's hard to give one piece of advice because it really, the hardest step is just putting yourself out there to find it, because a lot of times, this is another thing, is admitting that there's a problem, which we is also another thing that society loves to tell us, that there is not a problem with grieving. Is that then that's why it's like, oh, after a couple of days you can go back to work, or you should just be fine. No, grief is a circle, and it just keeps going, and you're not going to know what part of the circle is going to be the hardest, and it can be different days. There are plenty of times that things affect me differently. I can listen to music and I hear one song, I'm fine. I hear the same song 2 days later, I'm a freaking mess. So just allowing yourself to be open and understanding that your grief, if you're experiencing it, is never going to end. The one thing we can control with that is kind of what we use to cope with it.
I like how you said a circle because I always say waves, but
Mm-hmm.
circle's cool too because you're like you're gonna go around. But I think that you pointed out another awesome point that I realized from experience is it doesn't just go away. It's not like a an injury and oh it's healed like I'm all better now. Nah, it's like a part. It's now a part of us. It's more of like a scar or whatever you want to call it. Like, so I definitely resonate with that. And then as far as like more of the research that you did, what other like interesting things did you learn about grief that you think the listener should hear or no?
If I can, this is weird, but I've written something before that I was actually just about to pull up.
Okay, cool.
Um, that I liken to grief. This is the autoethnography that I was talking about. This is kind of what cemented me into doing more research into grief. Um, uh, where is it? Is the idea that two things is the idea that um, so this actually comes from a lot of different I've heard it mostly in song lyrics. I know it's a quote from somewhere from somebody who was a lot smarter than me at some point. Is everyone dies twice, is the first time when you die, and then the second time the last person mentions your name. um so I'm always as I that's why I'm so open about my sisters. I've told not strangers, but like people that I've met, I've been on dates, and I would tell them on the second date, I'm like, by the way, yeah, my sisters are dead. um because that's a big part of my life, and if you want to be a part of me, then you got to be a part of that. And you know people are always going to be thinking about that about me. If they think about my sisters when they think about me, or they think about only my sisters when they think about me, I'm fine with that. I want them to have the spotlight, because there's so much that I don't get to experience with them, or people don't get to experience with them, so at least have a memory. um and then the second one is, I can't find it exactly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking for it, but it's likening grief to a garden. Every spring, or every when you tend to your garden, it's in certain months, but I think of every August when my older sister died, and every October when my younger sister dies. That's now the start of my year. I don't really, I mean, yeah, you have New Year's, but that's kind of everyone's. But my year now starts in August, typically. It's a little fuzzier now that October is in the mix. But pretty much every August, I look at myself and I'm like, okay, where have I been the last year? What have I gone through? What can I, what has changed? You know, what is different? What would I have told her? How would I have experienced this differently if she was here? How am I experiencing it comparatively to because she's not here? And I do it introspectively. I don't play with what ifs. I don't go and be like, okay, well, what if I did this or this or this? No, because I know that's going to destroy me. What I do is I at least try to be in a positive mind frame of, all right, that this is your life. How can we get to tomorrow easiest? Because, as cliche as it is to say, not everyone gets to make it to tomorrow. So while I've got tomorrow and the day after and the day after, I'm probably going to tell you about Nicole. I'm going to tell you about Julia, because those two are the most important people in my life.
Hmm. And I think that's interesting to say about like your year will start then, because actually March is it for me, and yeah, so it's kind of like got this like little like weird, looming feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm sure like when the day comes, I'm gonna like reflect and stuff. But right now I feel like a little bit weird, but yeah. So I think that's interesting thought to put it as.
And on their anniversaries, I do. This is something I do. Um, so my sisters were big partiers in high school. I didn't drink, but they definitely did. So every August 30th, I will take every August 30th and October 20th. I take a Jameson shot for my older sister. And every July 6th and every October 24th, I take a shot of tequila for my younger sister. Two, I like Jameson. I don't like tequila. It kills me. But August 30th is my older sister's death day, and October 20th is my older sister's birthday. And July 6th is my younger sister's birthday, and October 24th is her death day. So
Mm.
as a little bit of like a memorial, memory to them, throughout most of that day is spent on me. I focus on me. I do what I want. I splurge on food. I'll sit in my bed watching movies all day. I just do something that makes me feel comfortable with the day that it's existing. And at some point, whoever I'm with, or however, whoever wants to do it with me, I'll take a shot. We take a shot, and that started on my older sister's birthday, the year after she had died. And I used to go to 12-step meetings. I grew up in 12-step meetings. Um, and our Alateen group, um, uh, which is, like, if the for those that whoever's listening that might not know what Alateen
Mhm.
is, you have Alcoholics Anonymous for the alcoholic. You have Al-Anon, who is for the like older family members of the alcoholic, and then you have Alateen, who are for the children of the alcoholic, or if kids themselves have problems, because teenagers, definitely do have problems these days, where we are finding ourselves in an epidemic of having substance and alcohol abuse issues. But so our group, we went there, and someone had brought like a bottle of her favorite vodka because they used to go out with her. Um, and so we all did a shot. And so from then on, for the last 6 years now, I've done a shot for them. Um, and I drink regularly now, but like it's just, so it's just something very special. And whoever I'm with, just, they always think it's kind of sweet, and I think I agree. It's definitely sweet.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't necessarily have something for like the day that they happen, but I do have like a for when it happened, I mean, but I do have like a sign,
Right.
and I was wondering if you had any like signs that like you think are from your loved ones.
Cardinals.
Shut up, that's mine.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah,
I
they
got a
show up
little.
like crazy all the time, I feel like.
hmm I've
No.
seen them since I was a kid. They grew up outside that not grew up, but like the tree that I was outside my bedroom when I was growing up always had cardinal nests in them, so they were
Hmm.
always my favorite bird. So I have a tattoo on my back is of stained glass. It's a cardinal and a dove, because a cardinal is my favorite bird. Um, and a dove is, my parents always told me that when my older sister was born, that there was a dove at her window. Um, so the dove representing my older sister, and the cardinal representing myself. Um, uh, I got that alongside. It's also a reference to a band called the Wonder Years. They had come out with an album at the same time with a song that had the exact same situation that happened to me almost perfectly. Um, and I had heard that song for the first time like a week after my older sister died, and I lost it.
Hmm.
So it is now the song that I associate with her death,
What's the
as
song?
well.
Because I've heard of them.
It's called Cigarettes and Saints.
Okay.
It's off their album No Closer to Heaven. So all that artwork, if you ever look through, if you like Google No Closer to Heaven artwork cardinal, that cardinal is the exact cardinal I have on my back, because I reached out to the artist of the album artwork to see if he would um, do something for me personally, and he did, and it was
Oh,
amazing.
that's so cool. That's awesome. I'm
Yeah,
sure he was like pretty honored about that.
yeah, he's a good guy. He does phenomenal work. So that was my first tattoo. And then the day that my younger sister died, I was here in Tennessee where I'm currently living, and I didn't know what to do, and I knew I needed to get out of my house, and I knew I couldn't be alone. So I called a good friend of mine, and her and her partner asked if I wanted to just go walk around town with them, and so we did. And I'm on the phone at the time walking around because I'm just getting phone call after phone call after phone call as the news breaking. And I'm on the phone at this time with my older sister's old best friend from high school, Alex. And she is talking to me, and I pause for a second because we're coming around a bend, and at the bend part of the bend is a driveway, and in the driveway is a puddle, and in the puddle is a cardinal just flopping around. And I don't really, I don't, it's hard for me to be like, oh, I believe in signs, but like I cannot not think of my sisters when I see cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten to the point where people think of, I talk about cardinals all the time because I tell stories about them, that people think of me when they think of cardinals. So it's always this way to get this circle going back to like, am I doing right by my family? Am I doing right by my sisters? Will they live forever or as long as I can let them, make them, whichever? Because if people are thinking about me when they think about this, that means they must be thinking about them too.
Yeah, I think when I see the Cardinals, it's usually like when I'm having conversation with somebody or like I am, and the conversation's maybe a little like sad or like down, whatever, and like I
Mhm.
literally like look outside and then there's like one cardinal on a branch on the tree, and this happened like at my other apartment and then like literally like here
Mhm.
too. I'm like, oh wow, but then the weird thing is then they like sometimes they like look at me and then they like fly towards the window and then like up.
Oh,
It's happened so many times. I'm like, oh my God. But then I also see like my mom was born on the 29th of October, so I see 29 like all the time. I
right.
also see like her birth time
Mhm.
um on the clock all the time too. But yeah, usually like when I see
That's
like 29, I'm
crazy.
like, okay.
Mhm.
Like, oh, that's a sign.
Yeah. So a part of my program here that I was doing at at school was part storytelling, because there's a storytelling festival in this area all like yearly. So the university partners with them. Um, but I have a story that part of, I had to craft stories and stuff like that. And I have a story that where I go, the Cardinals follow. Um, and it's just all about these different types of things and where I've seen cardinals and how they relate to my life. And I even in my undergrad, I my best friend, my roommate from there, his nickname was Cardinal. So I just still call him that to this day. But so like everywhere I've gone, cardinals follow, and it's just you know it's it's not just solo to me. Cardinals follow you, and I'm sure cardinals follow a lot of people because they're quite the beautiful sign.
I love that. That's awesome. So, is there anything else that you want to leave the listener with, whether, it's advice about grief or loss or anything that's come to mind?
Um, it's weird because it's like I don't want to plug it like an ad, but uh, there's this book that I I send to people when these are the people that are closest to me, that when they experience something. It's a book that I found that I freaking love. It got me through a lot. It's very simple, easy read. Like you could see that the words here, like like small little anecdotes and stuff like that. I send this book to people, um, and I don't even like. I just all I do is ask for your mailing address. I don't tell you that I'm going to send you something because people don't like that. Um, and I just tell them when you want to. You don't have to force yourself. You don't ever have to read it, but it's there if you need it. Um, it's called Living When a Loved One Has Died, by the author of Earl Groman. Um, it's like you can find it on Amazon for like $2. And I have four of them, four copies, because uh, I hate to say it, but death just is always happening. I think I pay attention to it probably a lot more since my older sister's death. Um, but I've probably experienced 20 other people that I've been close to die in the last 7 years. Or and then even more so, people who have lost people. especially with COVID and all these other things that are going on, and no one knows when the next person's going to die. Um, so I have these kind of handy because they helped me, and maybe they can help somebody else. Um, so if you want that book, go and find it, or go find any resource. I found a lot of clarity in academic journals. You can find a lot of research of academic research in the journals of death and dying, autoethnography. There is even like health communications that you can find, end of life care. Kubler Ross is like the well known name of death in the 60s. She has the book on death and dying, which I think is a very great read for someone that's just starting with death. That's where the 5 stages of death come from, is from her analysis of patient care. There's just so many resources. Um, and even just Googling death resources, or death books. When I go to libraries, I look for the death section. It's either that, or there is something called Camp Erin, ERIN, and it's found nationally around the U.S. But I volunteered at grief camp in the summer, which is something I was also going to share with you that you might have near you. Um, and they pretty much, you go away for a weekend, and it's for you to be a mentor slash camp counselor to ages 6 to 15, I think, for kids that have just lost somebody recently, and are having a hard time going through it. And it's just like it's a great experience. I did it once right before COVID, and I plan on doing it again this summer, because it is a great way to learn about people and their experiences, and get a perspective on something that you might not. I'm an adult that lost their siblings. I have no idea what it might be like for a 6 year old, or a 10-year old or a 12-year old to lose people. Um, and I loved it. The community aspect of it, that was so important to everything, and that was what the organizers of it really expressed, was that this community is going to give them something that they can cherish and that they can learn from, because at the end of the day, it's very much a learning experience for the kids that are going. So user resources, and look up Camp Erin if you want to volunteer. You don't even have to have experience grief in your life. If you just want to do something to help people who have, or learn more, definitely look into that resource.
That's awesome that they have such a thing. That's so cool. Thanks for giving all those recs. And yeah, I know they're going to be so helpful for, if not the listener, then somebody that they know. So it's going to be great. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, James. This has been like so good, and it's awesome to hear like your thoughts and your learning, like what you learned from the experience and how you're, making change with it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is the first I've ever been on for in this field of research, and man, I love it. I hate, it's so bittersweet that this is how like I found something I'm so passionate about. At the end of the day, uh, you just got to go with what you got, and here we are. So
Mhm.
thank you
Yeah.
very much, and you're doing so many great things with your own mediums here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, I will talk to you soon.